Did you get this?
Good evening and welcome to January 14th, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I'd ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I am Mayor Michelle Dissler. I'll be chairing this meeting. I will do a roll call at this time. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Present.
Councilmember Neighbor.
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Present.
Councilmember Kimling is absent. Councilmember Meyer.
Present.
Councilmember Larson Bonnell.
Present.
Did we supposed to have a guest council member? No. Oh, okay. Councilmember Sandifer.
Present.
Councilmember Constance.
Present.
Thank you. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Whenever you're ready.
Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You're going to turn around and introduce yourselves to everybody and let them know what troop you're with.
We are the Arrow of Light Den from Pack 3284, and they're with the St. Joseph Catholic School as our organization. I'm going to start here.
Hello, my name is Jacob Sterling. Hello, my name is Raymond Deanna.
Hello, I'm Nathan Stewart.
Hello, I am Cody Israel. Hello, I am Ethan Frank. Hello, my name is Jake Hanson. Hello, my name is Rachel Miller. Hello, my name is James Lee.
And these guys completed a Shawnee 101 tonight, so they know all things Shawnee. And we're excited to have you here, and thank you so much for coming and learning about the city and for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I'll offer the opportunity for public input. If you'd like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, and then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I'll ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. No person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while I won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Mr. Sandifer.
Yes, I would like to remove item number 8, item number 9, and item number 10 for some questions.
Okay, so we are removing number 8, number 9, and number 10. And so now I will accept a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So now we will discuss item 8. Consider accepting the dedication of land or an interest therein for public purposes contained in the final plat for Kenneth Estates First Plat FP 18-1812, a 45-lot single-family residential subdivision located on the south side of 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street.
Yes,
Mr. Sandifer?
Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr. Mike Schmidt to come up, and he has some questions I'd like to get the city to answer.
Okay. And if you could state your name and address in that microphone, please.
My name is Mike Schmitz. I live at 13021 West 74th Street here in Shawnee. And I'd considered some of my concerns with some of the council members prior to the meeting. I really had to have 2 different topics that I'd like to get some additional answers from the city about. The first one was regarding a traffic calming device or measure that has been discussed at several different stages, including when the city council passed the preliminary plat and zoning change back in August. When it passed at that point, there was a direction to city staff to examine the appropriateness of traffic calming measures. And my understanding is that, and this was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting that I attended in December as well, that basically the city just followed their basic requirements of, they looked at it, decided that traffic calming was not required, and therefore did not direct any traffic calming measures to be done. The discussion at the Planning Commission meeting was, if all they were expected to do was their normal job, why would any language have been added to ask them to look more specifically at kind of what traffic calming could be implemented? And the city staff at that point, I believe, basically said, well, we're sorry, we didn't understand that that was the intention, to direct us to what type of traffic measure to use, but more of a, is it needed, which to me seemed kind of counterintuitive. If you needed traffic calming, you would have done that as part of your regular job. You wouldn't need a specific direction to review it. And I did talk with Kevin Manning, the city's transportation engineer, and, you know, not only did he say traffic calming wasn't required, he had said that the city would not allow traffic calming measures to be put in place. And the reasoning, as I understood it, was that he viewed it as trying to remember what he called it, not a diversion, but a traffic hazard, I think is what the term he used. And so he seemed to be focused on the potential negative impacts without recognizing any positive impacts. And so I understand that, you know, given his expertise, he may feel that traffic calming measures aren't required, but I don't understand the stance of not allowing them. If there are clear benefits, and to my way of looking at it, at least, no discernible downside to the city of having this added, I don't see what the problem would be with asking the developer, who has said that he's willing to, you know, whatever the city asks him to do, he would be happy to do in terms of a traffic calming measure. That if this, you know, the two arguments that seemed to come up from the city staff at the Planning Commission meeting were that it would cost the city money and that it would set a precedent. And to me, neither of those arguments are convincing. From the cost side of things, this developer, I believe, would be the one paying for installing it, and the homeowners association would be in charge of maintaining it. So it wasn't clear to me what cost the city might bear from adding a traffic measure. And in particular, the one that was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, which was brought up by one of the planning commissioners, was the idea of like a traffic or a speed table, something that's only 2 or 3 inches tall. It's not a speed bump. It's not a, you know, speed hump. It's something that has a relatively low incline, up 2 or 3 inches, flat for like 10 or 12 feet, and then down a low incline. Something that snowplows can go over without causing damage to the snowplow or the speed table, and something that would be of relatively little cost, and something that, frankly, if you're driving the speed limit, you probably hardly feel when you're driving over it. But if you're traveling too fast, would be effective deterrent to someone speeding. And so I would like to ask the council to strongly consider that type of a measure. I'd appreciate the city's maybe providing some additional impact if there's things that I'm not aware of in terms of costs or negative effects. To me, the positives are very clear, and I don't see any negative effects. So to me, I don't understand why we couldn't ask to do something like that. The second point that I was discussing was the concerns about the stormwater impact. And I understand there's been several meetings. My homeowners association's representative from George Butler had a meeting with city staff last Monday. And I believe there were some additional action items that came out of that regarding the kind of cumulative impact, you know, not looking at just this new development, but how this development impacts the cumulative impact of all stormwater efforts and effects, and how, if that had been adequately reviewed at the city level. And my understanding is there was an additional report submitted by the developer's engineer last Thursday, and that may have purported to address some of those items, but I know I don't believe our Representative George Butler has had a chance to review that. And so from that respect, I think it would make sense to, if we're not 100% sure that we've met all the requirements that the city has in respect with those, why not table this for 2 weeks to give the city and George Butler or whoever to a chance to make sure we've adequately addressed all the stormwater concerns.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have staff available.
Yep, do you want to do traffic?
Do we want to do the traffic calming issue first?
Kevin Manning, Transportation Manager. First, I just want to say I appreciate the residents always coming out and telling us what they have to think, and I have had some good conversation with Mr. Schmitz on that, so I do appreciate him coming up and talking about that. Just wanted to cover a few items and kind of go over kind of my decision-making on this. First of all, when this originally went to the Planning Commission, I believe for the preliminary plat was back in July, there was some discussion on traffic calming. We had decided not to include it in the first time. The Planning Commission gave us some direction to go back and take a look at it again. And really, from my perspective, when we go back and look at it, we're looking for justification to install something like this. We're not looking to necessarily include this on every development. What we're looking for is some kind of justification or reason why this location is unique and deserves some kind of traffic calming measure. In terms of citywide, or I'll talk about the specific development. The developer did a traffic study, and you're looking at about additional 18 vehicles that are going to be using 74th Street coming from Kenneth Estates in the AM peak hour, and about 23 vehicles in the PM peak hour that weren't previously from this new development. So right there, you're not talking about a large influx of traffic that's going to be coming down this street. There's obviously not a lot of houses on 74th Street right now, so not a lot of traffic there. But in terms of overall traffic and volume that is going to be using this road, we're not going to be seeing that much traffic coming down here. Additionally, we would also want to see kind of an existing issue with speeding or some kind of other safety problem. From my perspective, it's difficult to come in and say, we're going to install this as a preemptive measure, because I get calls from residents. I'm concerned about speeding in their neighborhoods. And if we install something without any kind of an issue or, a clear safety problem, what's the justification for me to restrict that in the future? Now, Mr. Schmitz mentioned that, the developers offered to pay for this. That is true. I will say the city would not allow an HOA to maintain what essentially is a private traffic calming device on a public street. We believe that would obviously create a lot of legal and maintenance issues. If something happened to that and someone ran over it, or if we had any kind of an issue, who would be responsible? The city would ultimately be in charge of maintaining that. That would not be something we would put on an HOA, and we do not feel like that would be the appropriate.
Oh, sorry, I was a question.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Constance.
Is it possible to install later? Or if you don't do it at this point, can you never install it?
We can always go back and take a look at something after the fact, and that's something similar to what we do on any safety situation across the city. So it's not something that you're going to be ruling out forever. The issue is if you try to install it now without a clear problem, and I get all kinds of calls on this, what justification do I have to say no to those people in the future? So I think it is accurate to say the city wouldn't necessarily be bearing a huge cost initially, but over time and across the city, it could be significant. You install a speed table, you could be looking anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a piece. And so if we start looking at installing those on, commonly across developments, that can really add up over time across the city. That is my main concern, and really kind of drives the decision that I've made on this, is that, we don't have an existing problem out there. We're not anticipating a problem. There's nothing, the street is being designed to city standards. There's nothing inherently unsafe that we can see or anticipate. If that changes, we can always go back and address it later.
Can we ask to install it later?
No, after the fact, the developer, once they're done constructing everything, they would be turning all the roads over to the city, and would ultimately be the city's responsibility.
Councilmember Larson Bonnell?
So Kevin, I hope you remember I was at that Planning Commission meeting, and Mr. Schmidt, I'm sorry that we didn't get to talk at that meeting, but my recollection is that there was a discussion about different types of traffic calming methods, and that you don't speed bumps or traffic tables or whatever we are calling this is not the only option. Physical barriers are not the only option, but that there are visual cues that can also help with traffic calming. And it was my understanding that some of those visual things were planned on being installed. Was I mistaken on that point?
That is correct. There's basically going to be a strip similar to what you see maybe at a marked crosswalk that's planning to be installed. It's not going to be a crosswalk, but like you mentioned, more of a visual barrier that you're going to be kind of entering into a new subdivision. So that is correct.
That answered mine.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you very much. So do we have someone to address stormwater?
Good evening, Doug Allman from the Community Development Department. I want you to know that we have the developer's engineer here if you have technical questions, as well as city staff. I would just give you an overview of the process that's been undertaken to review this rezoning and preliminary plat, and now these final plats. This has gone through the same development review that any other subdivision in the city would go through. That includes stormwater analysis, stormwater detention analysis, and ensuring that pre versus post condition isn't exceeded by the development itself. In this case, because of concerns of the subdivision residents in the adjacent subdivision, this applicant went above and beyond the normal scrutiny that we would see for a project because it was located within a floodplain area. They actually hired a consulting engineer beyond Phelps to do a floodplain review. They did a remodel of the existing floodplain, the Johnson County study that was done in 2003. Beyond that, we did go ahead and meet with their design professional from George Butler, as he said last Monday. From that meeting, there were still some questions or clarification that the adjacent subdivision wanted. At the request of staff to try to put these issues to rest, Mr. Alpert and his group hired the professional again, who is a doctorate in stormwater modeling, and went back and reran the numbers with 2003 data, and what it clearly showed that with detention that's being provided in this development, that the pre versus post is less than it would be if that detention were not required. And I would say, I'm not an engineer, so I don't pretend to get into the technical merits of it. I rely on our professional staff, just as I hope that you do. And in reviewing all of the studies that have been done, our professional staff is extremely confident that the downstream condition is not going to be impacted, that the homes downstream are indeed safe. And part of that is because of the scrutiny that was basically in effect when those homes were developed. They were required to be outside of the floodplain area. And so I guess in terms of just an overall view, staff is very confident that this project is not going to have an impact downstream, especially in the area of Blackfish Parkway.
And
If you
just,
have technical questions, I would defer to either Judd or our stormwater staff.
and just to clarify too, for the record, even though you're not an engineer, the professional staff you're referring to are
Absolutely.
engineers. Yes, so I just want
PEs.
to make sure we
Yes.
have that on the record. Thank you. Questions from the council? Mr. Sandberg?
Is there a policy in place that's on the traffic calming that, I mean, that we can't do anything on that, or is it just a decision of the council?
So in the Public Works Policies and Procedures Manual that was adopted in 2015, there is a section on traffic calming talking about basically education, enforcement, and engineering. And it discusses specifically about how the governing body has never set up or funded anything, kind of the more engineering aspect of traffic calming, whether it be, speed tables or chicanes, anything like that. And so for city staff, we have been focusing basically on education and enforcement. Now, whether that raises to, I'm not quite sure whether that raises to the level the council can't do anything necessarily. We have a policy in place that was approved by the governing body, and we've been following it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Mrs. Meyer?
Yeah, less of a question, more a comment. I feel pretty comfortable with where we are in terms of the floodplain. I think you all have done your due diligence there. As far as the traffic calming measures, I personally don't see the harm. If we have a developer who is willing to pay for the cost, it can be something we can do to mitigate the concern of the residents. I don't see the harm in putting in a speed table to ease those factors and make it more palatable to the folks around them. So I would be in favor of adding that as well.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I don't really have any trouble with the speed table, but what I do have a problem with is some of the comments brought up by our traffic manager, and that is how many people are going to come in and start asking for these speed tables? Because, you know, I think you made a very strong case that there's no issue at this time. We don't anticipate any kind of traffic or safety issues here. So doing this as a preemptive strike seems to be really out of the ordinary, and I think it really opens us up to a lot of other people coming and say, hey, we want that too. And that does become a problem at that time, because then we're maintaining speed tables all over the city of Shawnee, because having gone to a lot of doors in the last couple of months, a lot of people are talking about speeding in neighborhoods. I mean, that was a constant echo I was receiving as I was in all the subdivisions pretty much in Shawnee, is that people drive too fast in this town and doing 40, 45 mile an hour and 25 mile an hour zones through subdivisions and so on. But I think the argument that we don't want to really necessarily go ahead with putting something in place that really is not demonstrated as being needed, I think that's kind of a problem.
Any other questions or comments from the council? I do know one of my concerns with it is what I have learned not only from our traffic engineer, Kevin Manning, but from our traffic officers, is that they find they're actually less safe because people try to make up time because they have to slow down between, to go over them. They actually speed up between them because they, in an effort to make up lost time. And unfortunately, then if they don't know they're there, and if they hit them at a harder speed, they're actually more likely to lose control of their vehicle and end up on a sidewalk, in a yard, in a house, if they're driving at night and they don't know it's there. And it's so, over time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I've been led to understand the past 14 years, is that they are actually less safe and give a false sense of security because the accidents from them are much worse. So for that sake is where my concern and reservation is with them, that until that shows to change, if they could come up with some other type of calming device, I don't feel confident with this kind. But that's just from the knowledge I have, because I am not an engineer. That's just from our police records and our accident records and our building. Yeah, you can come on up. Mr. Zimmerman, did you have a comment? Yeah, come on up.
Fact, have the visual devices planned for, if I understand that right. So it's not like there's no traffic calming measures in place. We do have the visual.
That's correct, yes.
So,
And I just wanted to respond briefly to what you said, Mayor Disler. So when it comes to barriers in the roadway, I often use the analogy like on a highway, you will see driving along, sometimes we have concrete barrier wall, or sometimes we have guardrail, or sometimes we have kind of guard cable in the middle of the highway. And the reason behind that, we don't see that everywhere. If you're out in rural areas where there's a lot of kind of land, we don't have that, because we recognize if a car leaves the roadway, it is best if they can just kind of glide to a stop. And that's why there's the concept of clear zones. If we could put, guard cable or concrete barrier wall and keep them on the highway, but that's an expensive option, and it's still a roadside barrier. But we recognize that sometimes that can be more effective, because if you've got a ravine or you're going to go off the cliff, it's more effective to stay on the roadway and hit that barrier. It's to a lesser degree or a smaller degree, it can be similar to some of the traffic calming measures we described. We don't want to necessarily always put in something in the roadway where it does become an obstacle. Sometimes that can be effective if you have an existing safety problem and you're weighing the pros and cons, and you say, well, it may be more effective to put this out here. Even though there may be a risk, someone might not expect it and might go out of control, we think it's more effective. But that goes back to my argument where if we don't have an existing issue and we put that out there, not saying it always will be an issue, but it could be an issue. So that's about weighing the pros and cons and understanding that sometimes it can be a benefit, sometimes it won't be.
Thank you. Okay, so is there any separate discussion on the 3 items, or does this cover all 3 items? Are we ready to make a motion and vote, or any further discussion on the Kenneth Smith? Do it
3 separately.
separate, three separate motions? Okay. So on item 8, to consider accepting the dedication of land or an interest therein for public purposes contained in the final plat for Kenneth Estates First Plat, FP 181812, a 45-lot, single-family residential subdivision located on the south side of the 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 9, consider accepting the dedication of land or an interest therein for public purposes contained in the final plat for Kenneth Estates, second plat, FP 191812, 28-lot, single-family residential subdivision located on the south side of the 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 10, consider accepting the dedication of land or an interest therein for public purposes contained in the final plat for Kenneth Estates, third plat, FP 2018-12, 19-lot, single-family residential subdivision located on the south side of 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is mayor's items. I do not have anything tonight. The next item is appointments. Item number 1 is to consider the appointment to the Johnson County Solid Waste Management Committee. I wanted to let the council know I am recommending Paul Chaffee for an appointment to the Johnson County Solid Waste Management Committee. The Johnson County Council of Mayors make the appointment, so no action is required tonight. If Mr. Chaffee is in the audience, if you'd please stand so we can recognize and show our appreciation and thanks for your support in this community. Okay. Business from the floor. Is there anyone that has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Next item is public items. Item number 1 is to consider adopting resolution number 1852, allowing substitution of certain bond proceeds to the Neiman Road Improvement Project. Passing ordinance number 3248, amending ordinance numbers 3202 and 3165 by updating the project authorizations for various Neiman Road projects. Adopting resolution number 1853, amending resolution number 1788 by modifying the financing structure of Fire Station 74 to be consistent with the 2018 2019 budget and capital improvement program. And adopting resolution number 1854, authorizing 6 storm drainage projects, the 71st Street sidewalk near Erfurt Park, certain community center cost, and the fiber master plan. 3 resolutions and 1 ordinance are required to authorize future bonding for various projects with construction years ranging from 2017 to 2020. 4 separate actions are required. The first recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1852. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider approving ordinance number 3248. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Third recommended action is consider adopting resolution number 1853. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved?
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Final recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1854. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider adopting Resolution number 1855, providing for the sale of general obligation internal improvement bonds Series 2019A for various capital projects in the principal amount of approximately $8,435,000. The proposed bonds provide all or part of the funding for Fire Station 74, Neiman Road Corridor North, Neiman Road Street improvements, and West 53rd Street from Woodsonia Drive to Roberts Street. A resolution is required. Recommended action is consider adopting Resolution number 1855. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider contract number 2019-003, an excise tax abatement agreement, William F. McCoy Jr. for Veterans Park Senior Village, first plat, located at 6100 block of Flum Road. Pursuant to policy, Mr. McCroy has formally requested consideration for the conditional abatement for the excise tax for the development consisting of 60 twin villas and 240 apartments. Recommended action is consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So approve. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider contract number 2019-004, excise tax abatement agreement with Jeffrey and Julie Banson for Banson Estates subdivision plat located at 5802 Lackman Road. Pursuant to policy, the Bansons have formally requested consideration for the conditional abatement of the excise tax on a 3-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Recommended action is consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 5 is to consider contract number 2019-005, an excise tax abatement agreement with Jeffrey Alpert for Kenneth Estates, first plat, located on the south side of 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Pursuant to policy, Mr. Alpert has formally requested consideration for the conditional abatement for the excise tax on a 45-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
For approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 6 is to consider contract number 2019-006, excise tax abatement agreement with Jeffrey Alpert for Kenneth Estates, second plat located on the south side of 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Pursuant to policy, Mr. Alpert has formally requested consideration for the conditional abatement of the excise tax on a 28-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So
For
moved.
approval.
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 7 is to consider contract number 2019-007, excise tax abatement agreement with Jeffrey Alpert for Kenneth Estates, third plat, located on the south side of 12400 to 12900 blocks of West 71st Street. Pursuant to policy, Mr. Alpert has formally requested consideration for the conditional abatement for the excise tax on a 19-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 8 is to consider adopting resolution number 1856, providing notice for a public hearing to consider adoption of the Belmont Promenade Tax Increment Financing Project Plan. Resolution number 1857, providing notice of a public hearing to consider modifying the Belmont Promenade Community Improvement District. In November of 2018, Belmont requested approval for a revised TIF project plan. On January 7, 2019, the Planning Commission approved revisions to the new TIF project plan and determined the consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. The next step is to adopt resolutions setting public hearing dates. There are 2 recommended actions. The first recommended action is to consider adopting resolution number 1856, providing notice for a public hearing at 7 p.m. at the February 25, 2019 City Council meeting to consider adoption of the Belmont Promenade TIF project plan. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider adopting Resolution Number 1857, providing notice for a concurrent public hearing at 7 p.m. at the February 25th, 2019 City Council meeting to consider modifying the Belmont Promenade CID to include an increase in the CID sales tax. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 1 is the election of the 2019 council president. Charter ordinance number 45 provides at the first regular city council meeting in January of each year, the governing body shall elect one member of the council as president. Last year, PS 7 was amended to update a new process for electing the council president and vice chair, which is the next item. Council members who were interested were to contact the city clerk to self-nominate. Councilmember Meyer was the only one to self-nominate for council president, so her name is the one that will appear on the ballot. Pursuant to policy, the city clerk will distribute ballots to all council members. Each council member will place a check mark next to the name of the council member they wish to nominate and return their ballots to the city clerk. The city clerk will then place the ballots on the overhead projector and I will tally them. The council member with the most check marks will receive the first motion for council president. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Next time I'll make it part of the policy. We'll pre-fold them for you.
Or not have to do the ballot if only one person self-nominates.
Here's the last one. Can we do that?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Fair.
So I will accept a motion to elect Stephanie Meyer as council president.
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Yay.
Motion passes, with Councilmember Jenkins voting in dissent. Item number 2 is election of the 2019 Council Committee Vice Chair. Councilmember Neighbor was the only one to self-nominate for Vice Chair. I'll ask Stephanie to distribute the ballots and then collect them already folded and place them on the overhead projector.
Already got worked.
Jim, if you can't follow the rules, we're starting off not so
Starting on the
good.
wrong foot.
Put on that wrong foot. Origami.
Jim's over there.
Too difficult.
Like a puzzle. I don't remember how I did it.
Wouldn't be any room.
That work? Yep. Okay. I will accept a motion to elect Jim Neighbor as vice chair.
So moved?
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Congratulations, Stephanie and Jim. The next items on are from the Planning Commission. Consider ordinance number 3249, PUD 041811, rezoning from commercial highway to planned unit development mixed use and preliminary development plan for Belmont Promenade located at the 16100 to 16300 blocks of West 66 Terrace. On December 17, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 7-4. The governing body approved PUD 041811, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. The applicant has requested that the governing body remand this item back to the February 4th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting for consideration of the revised footprint since modification has been made to the original footprint. Majority of those present and voting are required to remand the item. Is there any discussion from the council? Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to remand the application back to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider ordinance number 3250Z091812, a city-initiated rezoning from a combination of planned unit development mixed use and planned unit development mixed residential to single-family residential and duplex for 7 non-conforming properties on the west side of the 6100 block of Flum Road. On December 3rd, 2018, the Planning Commission recommended 10-0 that the governing body approve Z091812, subject to the conditions in the staff report. An ordinance is required. Recommended action is to consider passing ordinance number 3250Z091812. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item is from the council committee meeting of December 4th, 2018, chaired by Councilmember Zimmerman.
Yes, Madam Mayor, on December 4th, 2018, the council committee recommended 8-0 that the governing body approve the 2019 street maintenance program and authorize staff to bid the 2019 mill and overlay contract and other contracts provided in the program.
Thank you. So the recommended action is to consider approving the 2019 street maintenance program, authorizing staff to bid the 2019 mill and overlay contract and other contracts provided in the program. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Who to approve?
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is staff items. Item number 1 is an update on financial advisory services. Staff evaluated the city's future needs related to project funding and other advisory support and believe that the city could benefit from issuing a request for proposal for financial advisory services. 6 financial advisory firms were solicited and 5 proposals were received. A team consisting of the city manager, finance director, bond counsel evaluated the proposals and selected Columbia Capital Management LLC based in Overland Park, Kansas. Jeff White from Columbia Capital is in the audience, and I want to thank him for coming tonight. This item is for informational purposes only, and no action is required. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none. Item number 2 is to consider. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Good evening, Jeff White. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. Item number 2 is to consider the purchase of replacement fleet vehicles and equipment for the police and public works departments. The city participates in the Mid-America Council of Public Procurement, MACPP, and the Houston-Galveston Area Council's HGAC biannual vehicle bid. Police Department is recommending replacing 10 vehicles and 1 motorcycle in the amount of $299,284. Public Works Department is recommending replacing 2 dump trucks and corresponding equipment in the amount of $237,002. They couldn't just make it an even $237,000. There are 2 recommended actions to consider. The first recommended action is consider approving the purchase of 10 replacement vehicles from Shawnee Mission Ford and 1 motorcycle from Worth Harley Davidson in the Police Department in the amount of $299,284. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The second recommended action is consider approving the purchase of 2 vehicles from Summit Truck Group and corresponding equipment from American Equipment for the Public Works Department in the amount of $237,002. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider contract number 2019-008, a Planning Sustainable Places Local Grant Agreement with the Mid-America Regional Council for the Reimagined 75th Street Corridor Study. 75th Street Corridor from Schweitzer to Quivira was identified for a beautification, walkability, transit enhancement project. The city was awarded a $60,000 grant to conduct the study. The city's match is 20% or $12,000. An agreement with the Mid-America Regional Council is required. The recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider contract number 2019-009, Architectural Services Agreement for the Shawnee City Hall remodel project. The design for a remodel at City Hall was discussed during the May 22nd, 2018 budget meeting, and funding was approved as part of the 2019 budget. An RFQ was issued in late 2018. 14 firms responded. Staff is recommending Clark Enerson to provide design services in the amount of $279,000. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So, second?
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claims for January 14th, 2019 in the amount of $5,892,046.02. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider canceling the March 11th, 2019 City Council meeting due to the National League of Cities Conference. Staff is recommending canceling the March 11th, 2019 City Council meeting. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3, miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss? Mr. Neighbor.
Kudos to Public Works and all the guys that are driving the snow trucks. Sounds like it's a good idea. You got practice because you're going to need to do it next week.
Yes. Any other comments? Any other comments from the council?
Just in echoing that, I even got an email from David Morris saying how he was much happier with it this time than last time.
Oh, that is remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah, it's been nothing but positive comments, and as a matter of fact, I might want to share with the guys too. I had attended the grand opening, well, I guess it's not grand opening, they were already open, but their new location opening at New City Church this weekend. And there was actually applause for the Public Works crew, for the streets being great, for them to be able to get there and stuff. And some of the members had come up to me, to inform me that they actually go to other locations, one I think in Merriam and one in Edgerton, and the reason they had to come to the Shawnee one for service Sunday morning was because they could not get to theirs. Theirs was closed Sunday. So there was a lot of kudos for Public Works Sunday at the New City opening. So very good.
You guys are superheroes.
Yeah, yes, yes. That's what they said, the unsung heroes. So are there any other council items?
Peace storm, maybe.
There's no other items. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.